there comes a moment when the fog lifts, when all the excuses, the delays, the comforting lies we tell ourselves dissolve into irrelevance. In that moment, a simple truth emerges. Life does not happen to us. It happens through us. The man who understands this stops waiting for permission to exist. He stops asking for a map when none exists. He simply begins. Most people spend their lives in a kind of half-sleep, drifting between intention and inaction. They mistake motion for progress, thought for action, potential for achievement. They are waiting for the right time, the right feeling, the right circumstance. But the right moment never comes. It cannot, because the moment is always now, and now is all we ever have. We build our cages from the softest materials, familiar routines, predictable comforts, small pleasures that cost nothing and give less. Day after day, we choose the known misery over the unknown possibility. This is not living. This is existing by default. The tragedy is not that people fail to change, but that they stop believing change is possible. They confuse the familiar with the inevitable. This is just how I am, they say, as if identity were carved in stone rather than woven from daily choices. But identity is not found. It is forged. The self is not something we uncover, but something we create through action. Motivation is a fickle god. It arrives in bursts and leaves without warning. The man who waits for inspiration to strike will spend his life waiting. The man who acts regardless, who shows up even when every cell in his body resists, he is the one who moves mountains. Discipline is not the absence of desire, but the mastery of it. It is the understanding that action precedes motivation, not the other way around. The first step is always the hardest, not because it requires some extraordinary effort, but because it requires breaking the spell of inertia. Once broken, momentum takes over. Between thought and action lies a chasm. In that space, hesitation breeds. The mind, ever the cautious advisor, conjures reasons to delay. Not yet, not good enough. What if? But there is a way across. A bridge built not of certainty, but of sheer will. Count backward from 5. At 1, move. Do not think. Do not reconsider. Simply act. This is how spells are broken. This is how lives change direction. The moment between decision and action is where power is lost or claimed. Learned helplessness is the cruelest prison, because the door is never locked. We learn to believe we have no agency, that our actions don't matter, that the world happens to us and we can only endure. But this is a fiction. The bars are made of air. Every day presents a choice, to accept circumstances or to shape them. Not all situations can be changed, but all can be faced with either resignation or defiance. The man who figures life out knows this. He may not control the wind, but he can always adjust his sails. Transformation does not require grand gestures. It requires daily, consistent pressure in a single direction. A page written each morning becomes a book. A mile run each day becomes a marathon. The compound interest of small actions outpaces any flash of brilliance. Habits are the invisible architecture of life. What we do repeatedly, we become. The trick is not in mustering heroic effort, but in designing systems that make the right actions inevitable and the wrong ones difficult. Environment shapes behavior more than willpower ever could. Some believe talent is innate. You either have it or you don't. This is the fixed mindset, and it is the enemy of growth. The man who subscribes to it sees every failure as proof of limitation rather than opportunity. The growth mindset understands that ability is built, not bestowed. That struggle is not evidence of inadequacy, but the very process of becoming. The difference between mastery and mediocrity is not some magical gift, but stubborn persistence in the face of failure. Perfectionism is fear in disguise. It masquerades as high standards, while its true function is to prevent action. I can't start until I know exactly how to proceed, says the perfectionist. Ignoring that clarity comes from doing, not waiting. The man who figures life out knows that done is better than perfect, that the first draft must be bad so the second can be better, that the enemy of the good is not the bad, but the non-existent. Most of what we fear never happens. The rejection, the embarrassment, the failure we imagine, they remain phantoms, haunting us with possibilities that never materialize. Even when they do, they are never as catastrophic as anticipated. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the understanding that fear is a terrible advisor. The man who acts despite fear discovers a secret. The thing we run from loses its power the moment we turn to face it. Stagnation feels safe, predictable, controllable, but it is an illusion. The only true safety lies in adaptability, in the capacity to meet whatever comes with resilience. Life is change. To resist change is to resist life itself. The comfort zone is not a place but a trap. Its walls are made of rationalizations. I'm fine where I am. It's not so bad. Maybe next year. Meanwhile, life passes by outside. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. This applies to lives as well as physics. The hardest part is starting. Once begun, the path reveals itself. Action creates clarity where deliberation only breeds confusion. Waiting for perfect understanding is like waiting for the ocean to calm before learning to swim. The water is never still. We learn by diving in. Radical responsibility is the understanding that no one is coming to save us, that our lives are the sum of our choices, that blaming circumstances, while sometimes justified, never moves us forward. This is not about guilt, but power. The moment we stop waiting for rescue is the moment we discover we had the tools all along. We become what we repeatedly do. But first, we must give ourselves permission to be the kind of person who does those things. The would-be writer must first claim, "I am a writer," then prove it daily. The aspiring athlete must first declare, "I am an athlete," then train accordingly. Identity shapes action, but action also shapes identity. It's a feedback loop that can lift us to heights or chain us to stagnation. The direction depends on which we choose to start with. All transformation happens now, not in some imagined future when conditions are perfect, but in this moment, the only one we ever truly have. The past is memory. The future is fantasy. Now is where life occurs. The man who figures life out understands this. He plants his feet in the present while reaching toward the future. He knows that the only time to begin is now, and now is always available. In the end, looking back, what will matter is not what we intended, but what we did. Not what we almost tried, but what we dared. The man who figures life out knows this truth early, that regret is far heavier than failure, that the risks we didn't take haunt us longer than the ones we did. And so he begins. Not because he's ready, but because he's alive. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. He understands the fundamental equation of existence. Action equals life. Everything else is just waiting to die. The choice is always there, in every moment, to remain as we are, or to become what we might be. The door is open. The time is now. The man who figures life out simply walks through.